Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this side event of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, which is organized by the International Movement of Catholic Students, IMCS Pax Romana, in collaboration with the International Youth Training Center and International Young Catholic Students, IYCS. We will start with a short introduction on the session etiquette. We ask everyone to please mute your microphone if you are not speaking. And also please rename yourself in the format full name, country, organization, institution, university. If you speak, please speak slowly and clearly. I'll use the chat box if you have any questions or requests. Also, we ask you to please be patient with technical issues from our side or other participant sides, and treat each other with respect and kindness, because we want to create a safe and inclusive space here. But we also want to protect privacy. If you face any issues or concerns regarding the safety here, please feel free to contact us. And we encourage all of you to active participation. And if you have any questions, please either use the chat box or click the raise your hand button to speak live. So now that we've set the stage, let's take a moment to reflect on why we're here. Across the world, young people are leading the way, standing up for justice, speaking out for the planet, and building more inclusive and compassionate communities. We're doing this not only through innovation and advocacy, but also through our faiths and values. Organizations like IMCS Pax Romana and IYCS have long believed in the power of youth to make a difference. Guided by Catholic social teaching and inspired by Pope Francis' Laudato Si', they support young leaders who are working every day to create a better future for all. This side event will focus on how us young people of faith are helping to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, not just in theory, but in real practical ways. So we'll be focusing on the 5 key areas shown here, where young people of faith are already creating real impact. First, in health and well-being, young leaders are stepping up with creative community-based responses. In the fight for gender equality, we're challenging norms and amplifying marginalized voices to create more inclusive models of leadership. Young people are also reshaping the future of work, and when it comes to the environment, youth are calling the world to action, especially in defending our oceans and marine life. And all of this is made stronger through our partnerships. We are building bridges between communities, across faiths, and with global networks, proving that we're more powerful when we work together. What brings us together today is a shared belief that faith is not separate from action, it inspires action. And when young people are trusted and supported, especially in faith-based spaces, they become a force for real, lasting change. With these guiding themes in mind, today's event is designed to not only explore the challenges, but also celebrate the creativity, courage, and collaboration that young people bring to the table. We'll hear from inspiring speakers, engage in meaningful dialogue, and explore real examples of how faith-based youth initiatives are contributing to sustainable development around the world. Here's what our time together will look like. We will start with the opening remarks from Mr. Roshan Melvin Lobo and Ms. Bartha Sempinu. Then we will hear our speakers from different youth initiatives before we go in an interactive session and breakout room discussions, and finally hear our closing remarks. So now I would ask Mr. Roshan Melvin Lobo, the Secretary General of International Young Catholic Students, IYCS, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, moderator, Ms. Hannah. A very good morning to all of you present here, virtually from different parts of the world, and esteemed speakers, partners, and fellow change makers. I'm truly honored to welcome you all to this side event on faith-based youth leadership for inclusive and sustainable development, hosted by IMCS Pax Romana and co-hosted by IYTC and International Young Catholic Students. Today, we gather not just as participants in the forum, but as torchbearers of hope and transformation. In a world gripping with inequality, climate injustice, and widening social gap, it is a faith-based and social action movements that often provide the moral compass and the grassroots energy needed for a real and lasting change and solution. Faith-based youth organizations like ours are not only space of belief, they are communities of action rooted in values like dignity, justice, solidarity, and care for creation. We are uniquely positioned to accompany the marginalized, advocate for voiceless, and building bridges across the cultures and faith. At the same time, the collaboration with the broader social movements ensure our mission is inclusive, intersectional, and responsive to the urgent needs of our time. Together, we are demonstrating the faith and the social action are not just that the faith or and the social action not the parallel paths but deeply connected force for the common good. As we begin, as we begin today's dialogue, let us reflect only on what we do, but why we do it, and how our shared commitment can inspire new models of leadership, development, and peace. So, thank you for being with us today, and let us move forward together with the courage, compassion, and purpose. And I also acknowledge the presence of our eminent speakers, the chaplains, the students, and the student advocates who inspire us and also who are with us with the journey of achieving the goals of sustainable development with the faith-based social action movements. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. I would like to invite Ms. Bertha Sapni, now the acting manager of the International Youth Training Center. Would you share your opening remarks with us?
Thank you, Hannah. So am I audible? I hope so. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Greetings from Asia, from the IMCS Asia Pacific Secretariat in Manila. So on behalf of the International Youth Training Center, I'm excited to welcome you all to today's site event. As mentioned by the previous, by Roshan. So this gathering brings us, all of us together as a young people to explore together how faith, leadership, and action can shape a more inclusive and sustainable future. As youth, we carry the energy, the creativity, and the responsibility to lead the real change, not just in our local communities, but globally. So let's make most of today, be open, be bold, and be inspired. Thank you for being here. And once again, a warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Bertha. Thank you for the photo. Now we will have our first speaker, Mr. Christopher Decky, the manager of the Global Engagement and Partnerships at the Environmental Defense Fund. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Hannah. And I'm grateful to the International Movement of Catholic Students for inviting me to share my views and experiences at this event. Indeed, this is a timely topic, reflecting on the role faith-based youth organizations have played in the wider sustainable development agenda, and may I add, in the establishment of this very ECOSOC Youth Forum as a viable platform within the UN. So from the very beginning, organizations like IMCS, IYCS, and others, guided by the values and charisms of their faiths, have worked to enhance the viability and impact of critical youth-led platforms and processes to shape policy outcomes at the global level. As a former player in the youth-led space, and I mean it, former, I am no longer a young person for sure, but as a former player in this space, leading the IMCS UN advocacy team, and coordinating a great deal of engagement of other youth-led and youth-serving organizations via platforms like ICMEO and the Major Group for Children and Youth, I have had firsthand experience of the role young people played in multiple processes, most especially the advocacy we conducted around the formulation of the 2030 Agenda and SDGs. This year, as part of the preparatory process towards the high-level political forum, we are meant to take stock of the work being done to implement specific SDGs, namely 3, 5, 8, 14, and as always, 17. While the implementation process continues to face critical obstacles at all levels, as we experience major paradigm shifts in global power politics, economics, and trade, there's no doubt young people will continue to push for progress on these and all other goals, working in solidarity with other rights holder groups towards this objective. Now, thinking of each of the SDGs on the review, I'd like to take a moment to address a small snapshot of the positions we collectively took to ensure each goal was sufficiently ambitious, with a look at the specific targets that we supported, lobbying member states to align with us during the many negotiations that took place. So let's start with SDG 3, which is looking to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. When it came to this goal, not only did we fight for the age dimension, so if you remember what it says well-being at all ages. So not only did we fight for the age dimension to be included in the goal itself, but we also took very strong positions on specific targets, most especially on target 3.8, which calls for universal health coverage. Now, while this target in principle is good, calling for universal health coverage, we as a nation of young people in a major group for children and youth, informed by our values and for our concern for justice, we fought for this to go a step further, pushing for universal health care, not just coverage. Now, while we wanted more, the fact that we got even this language was a win, considering the politics at the time. When it comes to SDG 5 on gender equality, as you can imagine, the role of young people in pushing ambition here was second only to the women's major group. Once again, we fought for the age dimension to be included in the goal, working to ensure that young women and girls were also included in the text throughout. A specific target in which we took a strong stance was around the recognition and respect for unpaid care and domestic work, which is target 5.4. Consistently, our engagement put economic justice at the core, and fighting for the interests of such a marginalized group of mostly women, young women and girls, was at the core of our gender-focused advocacy. Finally, on SDG 8, focusing on sustainable economic growth, we took a pretty radical position that was bubbling up at the UN even at the time, where we pushed mainly for alternatives to growth as an indicator of economic progress and development. And while we knew the forces at the time were very much against us, the seeds we helped plant continue to germinate, to the point where one of the outcomes of last year's UN Summit of the Future, which is called the Pact for the Future, calls for a process to assess alternatives to growth and moving beyond GDP at the global policy level. Beyond this point, we also work closely with youth champions like Benin, an African member state, to secure target 8.6, which looks to substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education, or training, what we call NEET. So as you can see, so many of the positions that we took centered on the critical concern for justice and equity, strongly informed by key elements of the values we hold dear as youth faith-based organizations. Indeed, for me, Catholic social teaching and critical concepts of liberation theology were at the core of my efforts. And as we make our way towards the post-2030 process, I hope you will all be inspired by the work we did trying to secure the SDGs and fight for an even more ambitious set of goals, keeping your values, solidarity, and economic and social justice at the core of everything you do. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you, Chris. As our next speaker, we have Ms. Titi Mayagale, member of the IMCS Asia Pacific Women Empowerment and Gender Equity Commission and the Commission for Indigenous Peoples Youth. Titi, if you would share your experience and thoughts with us.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you to IMCS Pax Romana and all our organizing partners for this opportunity. Hello, namaskar, and chazalio to you all. I'm Titi Mayagale, and as Anna introduced me earlier, I'm a member of Women Empowerment and Gender Equity Commission for IMCS Asia Pacific. And as we talk about faith-based youth leadership for inclusive and sustainable development, today I speak to you not just as a Catholic woman, but as someone who walks in two worlds, as an Indigenous person and as a Catholic woman. I'm all of me, and these two identities of mine, they don't conflict for me, and they complement and enrich each other. In both, I find a deep reverence for the earth, a commitment to community, and a moral responsibility to care for the most vulnerable. The teachings of my ancestors and the wisdom of scripture both call us to live in harmony. with the land, with one another, and with the sacredness of all life, and to live as advocates for peace. So I won't be talking about the statistics and data, but the lived experiences of faith-based youth leadership for inclusive and sustainable development. And yet, I also speak with honesty. While faith has the power to liberate, we cannot deny that it has sometimes been used to oppress, especially women and gender diverse individuals. I've seen how religion has been used to enforce silence, submission, and exclusion. But I also believe that this is a distortion of our faith and not the heart of our faith. At its core, every religion is for liberation. And speaking from my experiences, Jesus, the person who is the center of my faith, didn't uphold unjust systems. He disrupted them. He flipped the tables. He dined and wined with outcasts, and he stood with women and challenged those in power. He didn't ask people to shrink themselves, but he called them to rise, to be leaders, to be unapologetically themselves, to advocate for justice and to bring faith in action. Now, while we're talking about bringing faith into action, the question arises, how do we put faith into action? For us, for IMCS, one powerful example is the peace prayer we hold every month on the 6th and 9th. These dates mark the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, moments of unimaginable devastation. Some might say that prayer don't create change, but the effect of these prayers isn't only spiritual, it is also deeply practical. While we hold these prayers, these moments of reflections are a consistent reminder of the horrors of the war and the value of peace. They are a call to consign. Each time we gather, whether in person or in online, we remember the past, but we also plant seeds for the future. We educate young people about what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, about the human cost of violence, and the urgent need for disarmament and peace building and partnerships of agencies to do that. We invite them not just to pray, but to act, to become advocates for peace in their communities, to build solidarity across borders, and to stand up against the normalization of violence in its all forms. This is how faith moves from the chapels to the classrooms, from the altars to the streets, and this is how we as a movement move to build a culture of peace. And that is the lens through which I engage in this work, and also particularly in advancing gender equity. I come from, and I also work in communities where patriarchy is so deeply ingrained that it is internalized. So sometimes the biggest resistance to change does not come from outside, or as we would assume from the male members of the community, but from within, women who have been taught that obedience is virtue, that leadership is not for them, that their pain is just part of life, that it is a norm. But our work is about gentle undoing and co-learning to unlearn such norms, about showing that their voices matter and their bodies, the stories, their power is sacred. And faith in action isn't only about prayer, it is also about the mission of presence. In the marginalized communities of Galtam that we have been working directly with, we work with the Dalit communities who are considered untouchables and indigenous women communities who have long been silenced, overlooked, or stigmatized. There we began an initiative to teach women how to make reusable sanitary napkins, a simple practical solution with a powerful impact. This was about far more than menstrual hygiene or reproductive health. It was about challenging stigmas that come with menstruation in our communities and affirming the dignity and opening spaces for conversations on reproductive health that has long been buried under silence. This work reminded me of the story of the woman in Bible who had been bleeding for 12 years. She was isolated, deemed impure by her society, and forced to the margins. But Jesus did not ignore her. He saw her, affirmed her, and healed her, not just physically, but socially and spiritually. That story holds power even today. It tells us that no one is too unclean to be cared for. too marginalized to be embraced. That healing is not just about medicine, but about recognition and dignity. In Galtum, we didn't just bring materials, we brought presence, we listened, we walked alongside. And in that process, we saw women stand taller, girls speak louder, and communities break the stigmas, the stereotypes, and the taboos surrounding menstrual hygiene and reproductive health. We saw the community begin to shift. This too is what the gospel calls us to do, to go where there is pain, to reach out to those excluded and to offer healing, not as saviors, but as uh, sisters and brothers, as their companions. Our commitment to environmental justice is also rooted in faith. Laudato Si teaches us that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are deeply intertwined. Climate justice is not only about science, it is a moral imperative, and the indigenous wisdom indigenous peoples carry affirms the same, that land is not property, it is our kin, that protecting the earth is not optional, it is a sacred duty, it is a duty of a stewardship that our ancestors entrusted us with. So at the end, let me leave you with this. Faith and indigenous wisdom both call us to care, to protect, and to welcome. And justice is never alone. It is integrated and it is intersectional. The common ground is already here. So we just need to work on it. Faith and culture can coexist. And when they do, they create powerful movements rooted in identity, resilience, and love. Faith must be active, not just in prayer, but in protest, in planning, and in policies. Empowerment means unlearning shame and rewriting the stories we have been told about who we are. And as youths, we are here to do just that. Do it boldly, spiritually, collectively, and injustice. And as Roshan said earlier, when we are here as torchbearers for change, let's strive to be the bridge in the disparities, be that glitch in the matrix to build a just and equitable world with preferential options for the poor and Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Titi. Now we get our final speaker. I would like to invite Sami Kame, the regional focal point of the Middle East and North Africa at the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. Would you share your experience and your thoughts with us, please?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with my mother organization that I have been part of for many, many years, and what has led me into starting advocacy. And of course, under the leadership of Chris Decky at the time, which was and still is my mentor. So I wanted to talk today about the relationship between our faith and advocacy. Do they come in hand, or is there like a difference between what you believe as a Catholic and how you can advocate in international spaces? So I want to start by saying that as a young Catholic, a medical physician, public health practitioner, and a global advocate, I believe that youth advocacy rooted in faith is not just helpful, it is essential. The gospel calls us to action. And also the Catholic social teachings give us the framework. In today's world, it demands that we act. So first, let me talk about human dignity. Human dignity is non-negotiable. The Catechism teaches us that every human life has inherited dignity. This is where youth advocacy begins. We don't advocate because it's trendy. We advocate because we are called to protect the image of God in every person. Whether we are speaking on climate, health, poverty, or, and especially, conflict, the message is the same. No one is disposable, and every life matters. Youth today face war, unemployment, inequality, and mental health crisis. Faith-based advocacy means that we don't just observe. We intervene because dignity demands it. Second, We are stewards, not owners. The Bible teaches us that the earth is the Lord's, and the Catechism affirms that our duty to care for the creation. Youth cannot separate faith from environmental justice. Pope Francis in the Laudato Si calls climate change a moral issue. When we speak about rising temperatures, polluted waters, or land loss, we speak about sin because we speak about the violence against the creation and neglect of the poor. Faith-based youth advocacy said, you cannot love God and exploit his creation. You cannot claim faith and ignore climate injustice. Third, we advocate through solidarity. The church teaches us that we are one human family, regardless of race, status, or geography. Solidarity is not charity. It is a shared struggle. When we advocate, we don't speak for others, we stand with them. The church stands with the oppressed. We as young people must do the same, locally and globally. And this is the main drive for me personally in my youth advocacy. Whether in refugee camps, hospitals, or policy spaces, faith-based advocacy puts others first. And this is what Jesus did, didn't he? He didn't build walls, he broke them. Fourth, we believe in participation. The Catholic social teachings emphasize participation as a right and a duty. Youth have the right to shape the world, but too often we're excluded or tokenized. Faith-based youth advocacy demands structural changes. We don't just want to be heard, we want to be part of the decisions. When we're not in the room, decisions are made that affect us without us, and that violates the principle of subsidiarity, another pillar of the church teachings. We advocate for youth councils, youth ministries, youth delegates, youth spaces, just like we do at the Major Group for Children and Youth, because inclusion is moral, not optional. Fifth, faith should be public. Advocacy is a form of public witness. It is not enough to pray for justice. We must work for it. The church has never been neutral on issues of injustice. From John Paul II in his stance against communism, defense to the poor, to Pope Francis, pushing for migrants. So must we. Our role is not to wait until we're older, it's to act now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your valuable insights and thoughts. We would now get to the interactive session, part of the session for all participants, as we start with the breakout room discussions. Okay, so we would now like to invite all groups to share what they have discussed about. You can see the questions again to share your thoughts on them. And I would like to ask first the group which discussed on SDG 3. Would you share what you have discussed on? And also, if you have any questions to the speakers, feel free to share those questions. They are all still here and can answer them.
I can quickly share because I think the internet connection of Katharina, but we took the notes, is a bit laggy. Okay, so yeah, we really resonated with the fact that it's our time to act. But for some of us, because we have the SDG 3, which is about health, and from a lot of our movement, it's not a real focus to health. But then Musik mentioned that they do a lot about gender-based violence and how to support young girls in schools and teach about those things. So I think there's also a way for, even if you're not a health-based movement, like maybe the pharmacists or the medicine students are, still we can do as mostly faith-based movements also a lot to increase like a healthy world. I guess that's from our side, in case nobody wants to add something.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think Jerome raised his hand. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
My English nickname is Rio.
Okay. Please, Leo, share what your thoughts are.
Our team discussion is not active, but in my thought, many younger generations faces unemployment, and it's getting hard to find a job, and it could find financial issue, even more mental problem, and especially in Korea, South Korea, South Korean younger generations are not mainstream of Korean Catholic Church. Most of the Korean Catholic Church members are old people and housewives. So we are not mainstream, and we feel something isolated from in the church. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Is there anyone from the group about SDG 5 who would like to share what has been discussed in their group?
I can take the stage. So SDG 5 is about gender equality or inequality. And kind of what we've discussed is how, or something I mainly took away, is how different the standards within different countries are. Because Nepal shared their side, and it became very apparent that, for example, sexual education, although it's on the curriculum, it's not even being taught in school, or that menstrual hygiene is something rather thrown upon, so that it's something people don't discuss. It's generally not okay to talk about that, and I think that's something very concerning. They were kind of trying to work on that, which is really, really fantastic. From my specific point of view, what we've been trying to do, but it's been a long year effort, is trying to combat the patriarchy, obviously. We try to encourage not only women, but also non-binary people and everyone that doesn't identify as a man, pretty much, to take on positions with loads of responsibilities, not only by just encouragement, but also by I'm not sure what the English word is, but the law of how our organization works. So basically the legal framework that we've been amending and changing every year to make more room for people to feel included. And yeah, that's pretty much what we've been doing.
Thank you, Felix. Is there anyone of group who discussed about SDG 8 who is willing to share about that discussion? Anyone? If there's no one, oh yeah, Leo, was that your group?
This is very serious question. The United Nations has real power to practice SDGs. I cannot convince about the UN's power and leadership. This is my serious question and opinion.
Okay, thank you, Leo. Is there someone of the other two groups, so SDG 14 and SDG 17, who can share about their discussions?
So from SDG 14, we mainly discussed and we reflected on the vital role of youth and organizations play in advancing the sustainable development goals, and the topics that speakers emphasized on collaboration, innovation, and grassroots actions. So Abhijit discussed and highlighted the need for greater awareness about the youth organizations and civil government organizations, where they need to help the youth organizations to develop the SDGs. And as a group, we recommended empowering young people through education and through funding and through different drives that we can spread awareness about sustainable actions and ensure youth voices to shape the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Emil. And of the last group, is there someone who can share the discussion with us? Okay, doesn't seem like it. We heard from SG8 that didn't share yet that they reflected on mainly on the point that Chris has made about the degrowth and the moving beyond the GDP as a measure of economic progress. So this is also a point to take with us. And as we now approach the end of this discussion round, I would like to invite our president of IMCS Pax Romana, William Knockrack, to give his closing remarks. William.
Okay, thank you, Hannah, and thank you, everyone. Thank you all for being here today with us. And it has been truly inspiring to hear from so many passionate young leaders. Your stories, ideas, and commitment remind us that real change happens when you lead with both purpose and compassion. And also, as we are faith-based organization, as faith-based youth leadership is more than a concept, it's a lived reality. No? What we have seen today proves that our values can drive action for health, equality, decent work, and environmental justice. And we come together across communities, culture, and beliefs. We amplify our impact. So to all the speakers, our organizing partners and participants, thank you for your sharing your voices and vision. Let's keep building these connections, supporting each other, and speaking up for a more just and sustainable and inclusive world. So on behalf of IMCS Pax Romana, IYTC, and YCS, thank you. And let's keep the momentum going. So thank you all. And I'm closing this site event today. So thank you and see you in our next event. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, William.